Welcome to the Fly Culture Podcast, bringing you interviews, reviews and fishing tips. Here's your host, Pete Tigus.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the latest episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. It's being recorded on, I think it's something like the 27th of July. It's a little bit cooler. It's about 18 degrees, so I'm really pleased about that. We've had a little bit of rain as well, so water temperatures should be coming down. I've been down to the river today and everything's grown up. I've not been down for quite some time now because it didn't feel right to fish in these hot, sweltering conditions, so I've not been down. It's amazing to see the grass has grown everywhere on the river. I'm back on my home river, the Tor, and I'm really pleased to be fishing with my good friend Daran Sadler today. He's down, he lives in Darlington, and he's come all the way down to fish the Tor, which he's done many, many times. I've known Daran for a number of years and started first guiding him, but as a guide, you quickly sort of work somebody's fishing prowess out. And towards the end, I was just saying to him, Daran, you know, we need to just fish together. You don't need a guide. And he's a really interesting person to be around, fun person to fish with. So I thought you might enjoy spending some time on the river with me today and Daran, and we're going to talk through what we're doing, where we're fishing. He's setting up at the moment. I've got sort of a dry fly rod set up. I've got a Bannister super fast cane rod. It's a 7'4" weight, and hopefully we might see some rising fish. I'm not holding out a lot of hope for it, but there may be the outside chance that we see a rising fish at some stage, so I'll target that. I think Daran's setting up with a duo at the moment. But Daran, it's great to have you on the Fly Culture Podcast. It's great to have you back down in Devon. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Pete. It's great to be here. It's a river I've fished many times, as you said, and I love coming down here, love fishing with you, and just looking forward to a good day.
Fingers crossed. We're going to, like you say, you've set up, you've got what rod have you got set up there?
It's a guideline Fario 8'9" for a 3. I'm going to put a clink hammer and a little nymph, I think, and just run my way through this run we've got in front of us.
I seem to remember the last time you were here, actually, you had some great fun picking up fish in that fast water, didn't you?
Yeah, we fished this pool a couple of times, I think, before, haven't we? And it's low. The water looks really low. But like you said, the temperature today is a little bit lower. There's a bit of overcast cloud, so with a bit of luck, we should pick some fish up.
Fingers crossed. All right, well, we're going to go and fish the first pool. It's called Washing Pit. I've described it before on previous podcasts. Nice even flow through the middle, pace at the head as you'd expect, nice bubble line sort of right down the middle of the pool, and then a slower one on the far side. We're standing on true left bank as you look downstream, but there's a sort of a slower flow on the other side there. The water's pretty low, so we can wade out into the pool without any issues at all. And I suspect probably the fish will be in that faster water there. So I think the duo is exactly the right setup. You've got the chance of bringing up a fish to the dry, but probably I wouldn't be at all surprised if Daran picks some fish up on a nymph. Even somewhere I visit a lot, when I come back, so I've not been here for a little bit, that you notice I'm listening to the sounds of the birds. We've seen a couple of kingfishers go down the river. We've spotted in flatter water a little bit further downstream a couple of rising fish. And every time, no matter how often I come here, every time's a little bit different. We'd had some rain. I got lucky and caught salmon a little while back, I think I may have mentioned. And that rain has really sort of left the water in really, really good shape, and it's pretty clear at the moment, which for this time of year I'd expect to see algae on rocks and perhaps not looking its absolute best, but river looks really in good nick at the moment. Very, very clear for our river. We do tend to, it never seems to be crystal clear that you can clearly spot fish, but and I kind of like that. It gives perhaps us a little bit of an advantage, but water does look pretty clear right now, so fingers crossed. Daran's almost rigged up now at the moment. He's got I think it's a caddis of some sort on there, just about to tie a nymph on, and we're going to get in the pool and see how we get on. One of the things I love seeing is when I see a good angler get into the river is that they assess, right, what sort of cast do I need to make? And this one really, Daran's sort of standing almost mid-river. He's just outside of the main bubble line at the moment and is methodically working the water at the moment. But it's always lovely to see somebody realise that because you're so close to that line, you're casting up the line, as it were. So he's throwing it off his other shoulder with a, it looks a relatively, I would think, 3mm tungsten bead below the caddis pattern at the moment. Interesting, he remarked to me as soon as he got in how clear the water looks at the moment as well. So I'm just sort of standing back at the moment. There's me and the dog here at the moment. I know he wants to come and join us. Daran, the dog wants to come and join Daran out there because he just loves it if somebody hooks a fish as well. But we're just sort of keeping back while he gets into the zone. I'm probably going to go and wander out and join him when he gets towards the head. My gut is that there's a little bit more shade up there. Water's a little bit faster. Doesn't feel warm at all, the water at the moment. So hopefully that's good for the trout at the moment. Like I say, I steered clear of the water. It didn't feel right to fish it right now. So I sort of left it alone. But it's just, like I said previously, it's just nice to be back on the water again. So encouraging start. I've just joined Daran now in the flow. Said he's seen a couple of fish rise, yeah?
Yeah, a couple of fish. One over on the far side there. I have no idea what they're coming up for. It's very little fly life about, but encouraging start to see a couple of fish rise in there.
And like you said when you got in, you've probably not seen the Tor looking this time of year as clear as this, no?
It's crystal clear. You can see the bottom, and it's... There's a fish there. If I wasn't talking to you, Pete, I might have been in. So encouraging start, but yeah, the river is really, really clear today.
We were just chatting away again, and coming back to the clarity of the water for us, I could just see a small fish come and have a look at the dry. Daran was saying that he was wondering that you think the fly might be a tiny, tiny bit too big, yeah?
Yeah, it's a bit. I don't expect to get many fish on the dry like that today. That's the second one come to the nymph. I think this time, especially this time of the morning with the sun on the water, I would imagine most of the fish will get on the nymph.
So we're coming right up to the head now, and I'm almost standing in that sort of faster water. And then to the left side, as I look upstream, there's probably some nicely oxygenated water, not quite as fast, in a section probably 10, 15 feet wide. I'm watching the dog upstream. He's seen some foam or something that's come down the river, and he's just spotted a fish rising some flat water in the pool above. Seen some light olives, probably a size 14 or so, come off now, 2 of them. So slowly, bit of cloud as well now, which is encouraging. We've got our rain jackets with us, but it's almost too warm to put them on, and we're sort of, I think, probably both secretly hoping that we don't get dumped on, but we'll wait and see what happens. But this looks some really, really nice water, and in these situations, I would think this is probably where, if we get lucky, we might get lucky. You hear the dog probably in the background barking at the foam now as well. So that's been exciting. The takes that Daran was getting were sort of very, very, very half-hearted, little nips here and there. We moved right into the head of the pool, and he's just netting now his very first fish of the day, which is really exciting. I've got the dog next to me, and fish in the net, Daran. First one of the day. Welcome back to Devon, mate.
Always nice to get off the mark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely little brownie, probably 6 ounces. But beautifully marked. Just getting back into the river quickly. And he's away.
Nice job, mate.
Lovely. Yeah, just where you expect them. Top of the run here. Slightly slower water at the top, right there in the middle. And yeah, it's good to get off the mark and finally get a fish.
It's sort of like a bit of a flat bit, isn't it? That the run breaks into 2 bits, and then there's flat water the other side in between, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And I've fished this kind of faster water. There doesn't appear to be anything in there, so I guess they're probably just hanging about in this slower bit in the middle. So have a few more casts and see if we can get another one.
Nice work, mate. So we moved up from that faster water and we're standing in Island Pool at the moment. We've seen smaller fish rising. We're just keeping half an eye out to see if any of the bigger guys want to come out and play. We've seen some, like I said earlier, some lighter olives and I think some blue wings and something a little bit smaller as well. So yeah, we've just seen a small one go opposite us again. Looked like he took something right off the surface, but I'm hoping I can find one of these nicer fish for Darren to have a go at the moment. But tell us a bit about where you fish, Darren, and your home water, because we're standing on mine at the moment, but I thought it'd be kind of cool to learn a little bit about where you fish.
Yeah, so my home water is the River Tees up in County Durham. Quite a different river to this. Freestone River, both good head of brown trout, good head of grayling, get a run of salmon, not perhaps too many, and the odd sea trout as well. It's a river with a lot of variety on it. It's probably the only rivers I know. It's probably wider at its source than it is we're in the middle and back end of the river. But it's fishes well early season, dry fly for trout. Increasingly, we're getting some big trout. So it's not unusual to get trout over 2 pounds early season, and there's certainly been some bigger fish come off. I think last year the record fish came off about 5 pounds, and it fishes all the way through the winter for grayling, really good grayling fishing as well. And there's a lot of clubs, and it's really accessible and good value for money. You know, you can get into a club up there for 45, 50 pounds a season, which, you know, for the variety and the quality of the fishing is just fantastic.
And I've been lucky enough to fish the Tees with you, I think, on at least a couple of occasions, and one of the memorable ones, we were it's been really cool, isn't it, that a group of us travelled out to Montana together and we've all sort of stayed in touch and enjoyed fishing trips together as well. And fishing, like you say, that upper section of the river where it's wider was absolutely mind-blowing there, right near the source, I guess, of the river. Wide, boulder-strewn, pocket water fishing par excellence, really, isn't it?
It's an incredible stretch of river. It's all wild fish. This is right at the sort of near the source of the Tees that flows out of a reservoir called Cow Green. It's accessible on a day ticket, and it's a wide river, as you said, Pete. It's boulder strewn, but there are fish behind, in front, and to the side of every boulder. And it can be tricky. The fish are like lightning. There's not a lot of natural food up there. They're very opportunistic. The dogs agreeing with me. Dry fly fishing up there can be absolutely fantastic. If anybody likes tenkara fishing, again, it can be absolutely fantastic. It's one of my favourite places to fish at top stretch of the Tees.
I loved it, I have to say, although the midges were a bloody nightmare. They suddenly came out and the wind got up, thankfully, and blew them away, so we were really lucky. And you talked about, when you were describing the Tees, the good head of fish, and I guess, you know, I always say about this river coming back to Devon, coming back to the Tour, that we don't get a lot to play at. Is that one of the attractions for you of the Tour, that it is a little bit more challenging in a different way?
I think it's the variety, Pete. One of the reasons I love coming down to the southwest here fishing is the variety. You know, we're on the Tour, which is a much slower flowing river than the Tees. It's, you know, the Freestone rivers, you know, perhaps a bit trickier to wade, but you can get closer to the fish because of the currents. The variety here, so you've got places like this here on the Tour, which is, I think it's just tremendous of brown trout. We fished the X together, which for grayling, which has been good. And then you've got places like Dartmoor, which I just love going on to Dartmoor because, again, it's just very, very different to what I normally fish. And I think it's the variety and the challenge. You know, it's you know, how do you read this river? There's very little rising today. It's slow flowing. You've got to wade carefully to get to the fish. You've got to cast well. It's not easy fishing, and every fish you catch is a real bonus.
It's funny, not wishing to blow smoke up your arse, but obviously while we're talking about this, I remember, and you talk about Dartmoor and everything else, and I remember the first day you booked me to guide you, and we hit the tour, and I think you had a sea trout. You had, I think you caught, which is a rarity escapee rainbow. And then we went up, and I remember the next day I took you to Dartmoor, and I'd got a new rod, and it was one of the new, at the time, Helios rods, and it was an 8'4" 2-weight. As anyone listening knows that I'm a big fan of lighter lines. And I said, well, I've not really used it yet. Do you want to christen it? And lo and behold, really nice trout we saw rise, and you covered it. And for Dartmoor, that was a pretty cool fish, wasn't it?
It was. That was Prince Hall water, I think it was. Yeah. It a lovely rod, but the river is at the west dart, isn't it? It's the west dart there. It's just gorgeous. And later in the day, we fished Cherry Brook. Just the scenery, the fishing. It's just it's fantastic. And we didn't quite have anything like that. Kind of around where I live, it tends to be slightly bigger rivers. So coming down here, getting that variety and getting that scenery, it's just, it's special. I just love coming down here, which is why I come back time after time.
That's cool. We've seen a few rising. None of the nicer fish just at the moment. The plan, I think, if you're a regular listener to the podcast, you'll know Honey Hole, that I call Honey Hole because we catch no fish in there. But we're going to have a wander up there and see if Daran can weave his magic up there, and we're going to have a look. Sun's come out a little bit. Where we're standing in Island Pool, there's plenty of oaks across the river, so there's lots of sheltered spots. The small fish are having a pretty honest go at it at the moment, which is encouraging. We thought if we saw a nicer one, we'll probably leave these guys alone, but if we see a nicer one move, then we might have a look at it. But we're going to have a little walk upstream and see what we can find, see if we can break the jinx of Honey Hole. So we got to Honey Hole now, and it's lovely duo water. It's not a wide or a big pool. It's probably 25 foot long. Probably there's a branch or some brush down into the water, some nice woody debris for fish to sit. It's, I don't know, ankle to knee deep, I would say. Great duo water. Great spot for fish to go sit. Towards the head where the faster water goes against the far bank, it's nicely in the shade as well. So my hope is there might be somebody sitting in there, and perhaps Daran can weave his magic and find us a fish in there. I'm also watching the pool above. This is where I'm hoping again. We had a slow walk up to this pool, just waiting to see if we could see a nice fish rise. And it's similar with this. This is almost sort of a spot to have some fun in while you're waiting to see if there's a fish rising in the pool above. But the bugs, that doesn't seem to be so many on the water here at the moment, but we'll wait and see what happens and keep going. Daran started to throw into that shaded, faster water now, and again, if this is going similarly to plan to the first ball, this might be where, if there's a fish playing, like I say, I'm hoping he can weave his magic here. I usually get a kicking in here, but it would be really cool to see him lock into something here. He's thrown right into the fast water now, and then you've got to pull out where the brush I was telling you is. You've got to pull out pretty quickly, otherwise you're going to get snagged in there. So it's not the longest drift in the world. He's just gone a little bit wider now, in some slightly shallower water again. That pheasant tail's still on. I've seen a fish rise in the pool above now, which is encouraging as well, so that's good to see. And he's really working, fan casting the pool, really, covering as much as he possibly can. It's easy, isn't it, to think, right, that's where fish are going to be in that shaded, faster run, but he's methodically sort of picking this pool apart, making sure that he picks every little spot and covers every little spot with the fly. And I don't know if Honey Hole's going to live up to its usual reputation or not. I still think there's a chance of getting a fish out of here, but we'll wait and see what happens. We thought that the pool, he's got a nice fish on, was going to live up to, it's just come off. It was almost as if you just jagged the fly out of the thing and the fish took, and it leapt. We got to look at that fish, and that was encouraging to see it. But it was manipulation of the fly rather than, and Darren had made a number of great dead drifts down the pool, and it was just as he was tweaking it out that the fish actually took. And I wonder if it is one of those situations you sometimes see with trout, that they think it's getting away from them, so they want to eat it, and they're not necessarily hard on the feed. But so sorry to see that one not stick. It was a beauty, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a nice fish. There's got to be fish in here. It's just a lovely looking pool, isn't it? And you know, a number of drifts there. You think, oh, it's got to be fish. It's got to be fish. And so I just decided just to kind of tweak and give it a bit of a move at the end of the drift, and a fish took. But there you go. Some you win, some you lose.
And we got a good look at him. He leapt as well, didn't he? So yeah, it was a nice fish. Like you say, it's such a really, really cool pool. It looks really good. It looks fishy. It looks like it ticks all the box from a fish's point of view. And like I was saying, that you know, you'd made so many casts down there. It may be the case that there's a bit of sun coming down into the pool, that they're not that hard on it. And it was interesting, wasn't it, that decision to move the fly a little bit resulted in a fish wanting to take it.
Yeah. Maybe that's what we have to do today. It's not they're not going to give themselves up, are they? So perhaps we have to just manipulate the fly a little bit, change flies, just try a few different things. And the fish was right in the back where where the shade is, right at the back of the shade there. So I guess if I was a fish, that's probably where I'd be living, in the shady bit. Yep.
Cool. Well, sorry to see that one didn't stick, but we got to look at him, and that was pretty cool. We're going to have a slow wander up into the next spot. I think I saw a fish rise in a really shaded, covered area. It's a favourite spot of mine that we may get a shot at. And then we may, Darren remarked on a pool just a tiny bit downstream. We may go throw the fly in the head of that as well and have a look there. But we're just going to go and see if we can find a rising fish. So we're just walking back downstream again now, and we're going to make a short walk down a little bit further. And then perhaps we might break. We didn't start fishing probably till about 10:30, 11:15, something like that. And then we might, being the gentlemen that we are, probably go and have some lunch and then hit the river again. But it's funny catching up with a friend that you get to see once a year, or of course didn't see him last year. You remember all the experiences and trips and things that you've had together. And I talked earlier about the teas, and we had a trip out to Montana, and it was a group of people that I'd guided, and we got them together, and I chose the team very carefully from an age group perspective and fishing ability and their ability to get on with each other as well. And we had a barbecue around mine and did some fishing, so that everyone, instead of meeting at the airport and not knowing each other, the banter started straight away at the airport when we did all meet up, because they knew each other, and it was a cool way to do it. But Montana was a pretty cool trip, wasn't it?
What a fantastic place to go fishing, Pete, and thanks to you for organising it and the group of people you pulled together. But oh wow, what a place to fish. Everything from drift boating down the Yellowstone, fishing in Yellowstone Park, the day we had on not my favourite, but the day we had on the Spring Creek, just the variety of fishing, the facilities we stayed at, people we fished with, tremendous trip.
And we fished together on the first day, and I remember us getting on the drift boat. The first day was a drift boat. I remember the wonderful brown trout you caught fishing terrestrial patterns. It was an ant pattern, and our guide was really, really cool. Didn't say a great deal, but I remember saying when we got on, because I try and make everything nice and relaxed, say, let's call this the love boat. And there was the three of us on there, and he didn't really say a word. And then I went back later with my daughter, and we drifted the Yellowstone with Matt. And I remember the first thing when we got on the boat, he just said to me, cool as anything, welcome back on the love boat. And that was kind of cool. He was a really cool guide, knew his stuff, didn't he? And knew the river intimately.
Oh, he absolutely put us on fish right from the get-go. Controlled the boat great. The patterns he picked for us. Remember, we caught a lot of fish on it's like a fluorescent orange cricket pattern. Just like nothing you've ever seen, but it just took fish. And he knew his stuff. And in fact, to be honest, all the guides we had that trip, there's a couple of other guys we had, they knew their stuff as well. And I guess they don't make money and don't get rehired unless they do. So yeah, what a great trip, and just great memories, Pete, great memories.
And I remember, I may have mentioned this on a previous podcast, apologies if I have, that Euro nymphing hadn't been heard of. We were just talking about this on the way down, and before I put on the mic, and saying we were trying to remember how many years ago it was that we went, and it was, I think, we decided or guessed it must have been about 10 years ago, and certainly over there Euro nymphing wasn't heard of. And I remember, the guys set up with a huge, great yarn indicator and a massive prince nymph and stuff. And it caught some fish. And I remember that you were tenkara fishing as well, and you wrote the thing for Eat Sleep Fish about it. And then at the end of the day, I'd been Euro nymphing, and I remember showing Vern, Eric, our guide. I said, "What time do we finish?" And he said 5. I said, "Look, let's have a go." And there was, I think, 3 of us. He was off duty now, and we just fished the pool, showed him Euro nymphing, and you could just see the light go on, couldn't you? And we just did pretty well in one particular pool, didn't we?
Yeah, that was in Yellowstone Park. Was it Gardeners, the river called? I can't remember the name of the river, but it was a tremendous pool, really quite compact pool. And we were playing, weren't we? You got 5 minutes to fish, and then you got out, or you caught a fish and you got out. And literally, it was a couple of casts, fish, out, swap, couple of casts, fish. And it was, I think for them, a real revelation. They'd never seen anything like it. When they're drift boating, you're often fishing sort of kind of the hopper dropper, they call it. It's a big hopper pattern with a small nymph on it, below it. Or a big indicator and then a big nymph to get down and a small nymph above it. And I think this Euro nymphing style of fishing, it just blew their minds. They'd never seen anything like it, and just so effective.
I remember leaving Eric a leader as well to play with. It was one of the fish on ones, one of the early ones that you could buy, in effect, a shop bought Euro leader, and left that with him to go play with. And it's lovely to be able to show a fellow I was guiding at the time. I never, for some strange reason, I never used to say what I did if we had guides, and I didn't want to put them under pressure, I guess, in some respects, or feel that. And I guess, it's just nice to get into the boat or get onto the river as a fisherman and enjoy the fishing for what it was. But one of my overriding memories of that as well as the wonderful fishing, and I remember where we were staying, the Yellowstone, I think it was, that you could see from there that looked stunning, was that you and I are both early risers, and meeting early on in the day for the first cup of coffee of the day before we went fishing was pretty cool, wasn't it? We got the chance to put the world to rights and everything else that went with it.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of fishing trips for me and fishing with friends. It's not just the time you spend on the water fishing, it's the camaraderie and the relationships and the bonds that you build with people. And the situation where that ranch was that we stayed on, just being able to look down, see the Yellowstone snaking through the valley. And you remember at the time as well, there was a lot of forest fires, and the hills behind us at night were ablaze, and we sat out at night watching these horrendous fires, and you could just see the fires springing from tree to tree to tree. So, a lot of memories on that trip, a lot of memories.
Yeah, it's a pretty special place. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was that, and I said at the beginning how I met you, having worked for you as a guide, and I know you've hired guides and stuff like that. And is that a function of learning from those people, and also being, you're very busy with work and everything else, that you're able to get access onto water, pick up some information and everything that goes with that? And do you find that has worked really well from you? From what I see and know, the answer to that I know is yes, because of what an adept angler you are. But do you think that really put you on a fast track to be able to pick up techniques and refine your fishing much more quickly?
I think what it does is, if you're coming down to the southwest for a couple of days, as I was that first time I fished down here, Pete, I didn't know what rivers to fish. I didn't know what beats to fish. I didn't know kind of how to fish it, the techniques, where the fish would lie, etc. And fishing is different from river to river. So I think what having a guide does is it really fast tracks you you're fishing somewhere new to kind of get on to fish. So, the first time you took me to Dartmoor, we were on fish straight away. If I'm just looking at a map and trying to pick a beat, it can be a bit daunting. My home river, I've never had a guide on my home river for the simple reason that I've got the time to spend going fishing day after day or weekend after weekend over the years to get to know it. But if you're coming somewhere new, and I've been lucky, I fished here with you. We had guides in Montana. I've been lucky enough I fished in New Zealand and I had a guide for a couple of days there. And probably the big part of what I wanted the guide in New Zealand for was just to help me with, where would you recommend going? Which rivers would you recommend fishing? What beats, this time of year, what flies, what time of day, and just kind of getting that sort of information out, which that local knowledge when you're going somewhere new, it's invaluable. And it puts you on fish, and it's the difference between having a trip and catching perhaps a lot of fish and having a trip and maybe not catching as many.
And do you think that's changing a bit more so in the UK, that people are more willing than they have been to hire a guide? And, I've seen it many times when people say, well, I've been fishing for years, I don't need a guide. But do you think that is starting to change a little bit now?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I know 2 or 3 guides and they're all busy and rightly so, because they're generally, all the guides I know and yourself, when you were guiding, Pete, it's a really good service. I think it's something that, in America, it's very, very common. People get a guide, and I think it is becoming more common over here. And it's good to see. And as long as people are giving a good service and they're helping their clients get onto some fish and they're helping them out with some local knowledge, I think it's a great thing. Yeah, and that's a really interesting insight into that from a hiring a guide point of view as well. And like Daran says, if people do, I guess, think about it, do the due diligence, search, word of mouth, I always found was a wonderful way of advertising. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If I were going, if I'm still heading, I'll get a guide for a couple of days because I can see more of the river, I can get some information, learn the techniques, and build from there. And you can try, particularly with a fish like steelhead, and it's cost me some money, that going into a store, buying something and hoping you'll get some information isn't always forthcoming, and I understand why that is. But having that guide will allow you, I guess, a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more freedom. So we've walked downstream a little bit and we're in 4 Acres Pool. It's called 4 Acres because it's a really, really long pool. But most of it, the head of it, we'd sort of sat back a little bit as the water slowed down a little bit and waited for rising fish. It looks as though the hatch has picked up a little bit more now and there's a bit more caddis on the water, which is encouraging. We watched the fish for a while that we weren't 100% sure how big it actually was, but our gut was it probably wasn't what we were hoping for. So we decided to leave it alone a little bit, and Daran's sort of working that faster water now, coming into the head of the pool with the duo still, and see what we can find there. And then we thought what we'd do is see what the weather brings. It's sort of, there's still a fair bit of cloud around at the moment, but it does get broken up relatively regularly, and we thought, right, okay, well, while we've got some cloud now, we'll keep fishing for a bit and see what happens. But we've just been sitting chatting about life, and I've just seen that fish go again. I think it might be worth a look at some stage, actually. I don't think it was a huge one, but he's relatively happy. He's on station in a bubble line that goes against the far flow. The far side, sorry. And yeah, he's risen, I reckon we've seen half a dozen times now, and maybe worth having a look at some stage. But my guess is he's probably eating caddis as they're coming up through the water column. Just jiggling the...
So the fast water's helped out again, hasn't it, Mud?
Yeah, it certainly has. I was disappointed not to get anything as we worked the way up through the pool, and we're right up here at the head of it where it's really fast, and again, just moving and manipulating the fly a little bit, and we just had a nice trout. Nicely done.
It is a funny old game. We were fishing. We're fishing very at the very bottom of the water here now, and it's a pool called Bottom Pool, and I really like it. It's more of a salmon-y sort of pool, and we still have the duo set up. And I was just saying to Daran feels as though it's probably a bit more of a uranymphy pot. And then lo and behold, he hooks and lands a fish. So never stop learning. So I thought I came up with this really cool plan that we'd driven down to the bottom. I'd drive up a little bit, Daran would fish his way back up, and then everything would meet on a honey hole 2 pool, and everything would be fantastic. The downside of that is, as I said at the beginning of this, I've not been down for a little bit because of the water temperatures, and everything has just grown. So what has happened is that I've tried to find a way into the river, can't find it, ended up walking downstream, shouted out, you can barely see down into the river as well, shouted out Daran's name, found him, and he's barely moved. And there's a reason you barely moved, mate. Why was that?
Put my flies in a tree.
But the real reason...
Yeah, before the flies are in the tree. I just had a lovely trout, about £1.5 pounds, just out of the run, just below us there. Again on a duo, we tied a heavier nymph on to get a bit deeper. It's a deep run, and good fight. It's quite a push through here. They've got trees behind me. I was struggling to get my rod up. So really good fight, but got it in the net, got a couple of pictures. It's good. Just shame you weren't here, Pete. Anyway.
If you could see me now, I'm stung, I'm bitten. I got thorns stuck in me. I'm sweating like a whatsit at the moment, and I've missed the magic when it's happened. You said when you had it on that you didn't feel it was a particularly big fish at first.
Yeah, he didn't seem to move very much at first, and I just thought it was a small fish. But when it started to kick and it got itself in the current and it got down below me in the faster water, it was a heck of a fight. And then by the time I got it to the surface, you began to see, actually, this is a big fish, and 7x tippet. You just need to play this really carefully, and didn't want to lose it, but got it in the net. Result.
Nice one. Well, we're going to have a look at the photos now, but some magic's happened. As I said, there've been fish. On the bottom, we've picked up some fish there as well, and that's encouraging as well. And perhaps the slightly heavier nymph in those pots has paid dividends. So I think we're going to we're sort of standing about ankle deep in a pool at the moment. We're going to head, as I say, probably up to honey hole 2, see if there's anything in there. Then we've got to try and figure out how to get through all the vegetation to try and find the car again. So that's going to be fun as well. So I'm just in the river just to cool down now at the moment. So we tried to forge our path through from the other side and couldn't do it. So we've had to walk back downstream again. Daran found an exit point and we managed to clear up the bank and have a wander back now. So we're having a walk back. We might see if we can find... We got caught in a shower and that's lifted now. It feels really nice, dry fly conditions, I have to say. But while we were doing that, I was thinking, and, Daran, for West Country standards, has caught a really nice fish. I've seen the photo of 1.5 pounds, and it dawned on me that he's not... I've got to get this on Instagram, I've got to get it on Facebook, I've got to get it on Twitter, because he doesn't do that. And it's kind of made me think a little bit about people who are out there doing it to a really good level, really high level of fishing, and are not sharing it with the world, not feeling they've needed to do that sort of thing. And I'll probably use that picture when we promote the podcast, that when we put it out, but that's as far as it will go. And Daran, it was having this sort of conversation about it and not feeling the need to share your fishing with the rest of the world. How did that... Was it a conscious decision to do that, or are you just not bothered by it?
I don't use social media, so I've got no Facebook page. I don't use Twitter, Instagram, any of those things. And for me, fishing's about what we've done today, Pete. It's about meeting up with friends, going fishing, enjoying it. You catch some fish, it's great. I don't feel the need to share that with anybody. And I'm not really sure sometimes what the purpose of sharing some things on social media really is. For me, it's about the experience, it's about being in the moment, it's about enjoying what we've just had. And I've got a photo on my phone. I'll be able to look back at that in days, months, years to come. And it's that triggers the memory of what we've shared today, which is a great experience.
And that's quite a refreshing or different view of life, isn't it? That there isn't that need to have, I guess, the satisfaction of posting it out there, the satisfaction of receiving feedback on it, or anything else that goes with it. You're just happy that you've done a really good job, and that's it, isn't it? That's how it feels to me that you view those things.
Yeah, exactly. Perhaps I'm just too old, Pete, and I don't really understand some of the point of some social media platforms. I use one for work, but apart from that, I don't see the point in sharing everything that I do, or even a fraction of what I do, with a lot of other people. I feel no need for it, so I just don't bother. Don't do it.
Interesting. I guess throwing this in there, that, as I've alluded to throughout this podcast, that when it comes to fishing, you know your stuff. And I suppose I could argue the case. I'm not going to, but I'm going to put it to you that people might be able to benefit from your knowledge of fishing, what you're doing, why you're doing it. Would you say you don't really care, or you're not bothered, or how does that compute with you?
So I don't see myself as somebody who should be influencing or kind of having an impact on lots of people that I don't know. It just doesn't, for me, it just doesn't compute. It's just not something that I do. I've got friends that I fish with. When I fish with my friends, we swap tips, we discuss tactics, we talk about what we're doing, and we learn from each other. I don't really see the need to do it wider. And maybe that's selfish, but actually I'm not convinced that all social media is altruistic, as you kind of inferred there. And it's just something I choose not to do.
Well, huge respect for that. I think, the dry fly that we'd been using earlier that you'd tied would be really cool. And lots of people on a duo would probably be, if they were fishing a duo, would be really interested to see that. But I respect that. And as somebody, who uses social media, I like the good aspects of it and the not so good aspects of it. But it's been interesting to hear a view from somebody who has not embraced it in the same way, and I'm sure there's thousands of Darans out there who are exactly the same, that feel, well, why should I? I don't need to, so I'm not going to. And I kind of like that. It's kind of cool.
I think you said the ups and downs, and I think that there's clearly lots of positives about social media, but I think also increasingly people are beginning to realise some of the downsides to it. And I think you can't be on social media without accepting both the ups and the downs. And I just choose not to engage at all, and that's my way. I'm not trying to justify it to anybody, and not trying to persuade anybody to do what I do. I know a lot of people use social media for fishing, really enjoy it and find it beneficial, and that's great. I've got no axe to grind with them if that's what they choose to do.
Nice. Well, it's been an awesome day. It's not been the easiest day that we've had on the water, but you've done fabulous work finding fish, mixing things up just a little bit. And I have to say, on a personal note, it's great having you back on the tour and spending time chatting to you about life in general. It's
just been absolutely great, Pete, coming back down to the tour and having a day with you, dinner with you and my family last night. It was great. And, a day spent fishing with you. It's a great memory. Thank you very much.
Great, mate. Thanks so much. Everyone, this has been the Fly Culture podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy these as much as I do. It's been one of those days on the water. I'm sure many of you who listen to this have similar sort of days with friends. And, we shared a rod. We've done a little bit here and there. We've talked. And that, to me, is what fishing's about, so much more. And I guess in a roundabout way, that's what Daran was saying as well, and his feelings about that as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this one, and as ever, there'll be plenty more. Thanks for listening.
The Fly Culture podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly print magazine. For more information, please visit flyculturemag.com. You can also find Fly Culture on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.